Hey guys, I want to come on here to talk about this story, and this is something that initially I wasn't going to talk about, but and it wasn't I wasn't going to purposely talk about it. It's just that it seemed to have slipped through the cracks of everything else that was going on. But the reason this is extremely important because it not only shows their dedication to keeping Black people inferiorized, it also shows the white female's role in maintaining white supremacy. Now, I've told you guys repeatedly and over again that the dominant society's entire identity, how they feel about themselves, whether they believe they're good or whether they believe they're effective, whether they believe they're superior or inferior, relies 100% on what Black people think about themselves, okay? White supremacy cannot exist unless Black inferiorization exists. And in order for Black inferiorization to exist, it has to be indoctrinated in the minds of Black people from the minute they are a child, really from the minute that they leave the womb, and it has to be reinforced 24/7, okay? In order to do that, you have to have an educational system or an indoctrination system disguised as education, meaning your oppressors have to control all of the information that comes in. They have to control all information that comes in, specifically pertaining to who you view yourselves as. Understand that this was one of the reasons, the primary reason why Black people were not allowed to read during slavery. Because if they're reading, then they're controlling the information, they're gaining critical thinking skills, they're building their identity, and it's an identity separate from the identity that white supremacy needs them to have in order for white supremacy to thrive. They cannot just come out and say, hey, we're supreme. Again, you can't trick nature, you can only trick people. And in order to trick people into believing you're supreme, you have to do much more than just declare yourself supreme. You have to primarily control the information. The only information that you give have to lead towards supremacy, meaning controlling Black people's history, whitewashing history, eliminating any history about Europeans that would depict them in a negative way. Okay, so that means that's why they'll only teach Black people history that involves them being slaves, and they won't tell you about the Dark Ages. They'll show you about Europeans going throughout history. They'll tell you they're conquering them, but they won't tell you that they're conquering them based on violence and savagery. So they'll omit all of those details so that now you have a product and an educational system that's really indoctrinating into inferiority. Now, also, many people, mostly only Black men, omit white women from the process of white supremacy. Just because they have a passive role does not mean that it's not the most important role. If white women were not being these instructors by the majority, which is a strategic part of their plan, because understand it's not an accident that about 90% of your teachers in school are white women. That's no accident. It's not because Black women don't want to be teachers. It is because they can't have Black women teaching Black students, because then you'll get a different outcome. So what they do is they have white women being most of these instructors at school. Keep in mind that a lot of Black men complain about mass incarceration, Black men being, like, these Black students being labeled as mentally retarded, put in special ed classes, told they have ADHD, being accused of being sexual predators, being funneled into the school to prison pipeline. But they ignore the fact that white women are doing this. This is one of white women's roles in maintaining white supremacy. In addition to birthing and nurturing and raising white supremacist children, she's also required to indoctrinate Black children and funnel them into the school to prison pipeline. But these are the women that these Black men who choose to date them go out there and advocate for. So it says the city is investigating explosive complaints from students and staff at a Bronx school saying their principal barred an English teacher from delving into Black history lessons and targeted Black teachers and students for abuse. The Department of Education launched the probe after kids and educators leveled the allegations against intermediate school 224 principal Patricia Catania, who is white, the Daily News has learned. Now, understand that Black people need to have a separate educational system. At this point, we already know all of their curriculum is false. There's no reason why Black parents should be allowing their children to be indoctrinated by false information. You already know at this point that history is completely whitewashed. It's constructed in a manner that is going to glorify whiteness and inferiorize Blackness, and yet Black people are still allowing their children to get this curriculum that's doled out by the Department of Education. So Black people need to take this battle on a federal level and tell them they need a complete overhaul of the educational system. Understand that I would be doing this if I had a child and if my child was required to be in this educational system. It is not optional for you to teach your children this information. You don't have a choice. Even if you homeschool children, you still have to homeschool them based on the curriculum requirements that's set by the Department of Education. So at this point, whether you homeschool, private school, or public school your child, there is no way to get around this indoctrination except to demand that the Department of Education overhauls the curriculum, teaches the right curriculum, or say refuse to send your child to those schools. That's what Black people need to do, because you should not be having your enemy educate your children anyway. The 26-year veteran of City School remains in her $154,257 post, even though students and staffers of color say she's created a hostile environment since she took the top job at IS-224 in December 2016. Look, Black people need to pull their children out of that school district. She's racist, said English teacher Mercedes Liriano, 45, who's worked at the school where 95% of students are Black and Hispanic for more than a decade. She's trying to stop us from teaching our students about their own culture. The disturbing allegations relayed to the Daily News by 8 current or former employees and 5 students come amid a spat of racially tinged controversy at city schools. Liriano said she was beginning a class Wednesday when Catania pulled her aside and told her not to give lessons about the famed Harlem Renaissance movement of literature and art in the 1920s. The order shocked Liriano. Now, the thing is, as an English teacher, she would be able to teach about the Harlem Renaissance movement of literature. English teachers teach about literature. So this is very relevant to her field of expertise. She teaches the Harlem Renaissance as well as the writings of Frederick Douglass to her 6th and 7th grade students as part of the officially recommended New York State curriculum standards, okay? Now, so the state determines the standards, and the state get their standards based off the Federal Board of Education. So this is where Black people need to take their battle. You do not need to be protesting in the streets. You need to be taking your battle to the Federal Department of Education. But Catania made clear she had a far different view of what Liriano should be teaching her students, the incensed educator said. She said, "I'm not a social studies teacher, so why am I teaching my students about Black history?" Liriano said. Her tone was very harsh, as if I committed a heinous crime. Well, she did commit a heinous crime in the view of white supremacy. Because if you have a Black teacher teaching accurate Black history and it's going to give Black people some sense of self-esteem, that directly goes against the agenda of the system of white supremacy. So in her eyes, yes, you did. You committed a heinous crime because you're attempting to disrupt white supremacy that relies 100% on Black inferiority. Liriano returned to class and continued her lesson in defiance. She's attempting to stop the students from learning about their own history, and she's denying them the right to learn about where they came from, Liriano told the news. This is one thing about Black women. If you look throughout history, Black women have always been more defiant of white supremacy than Black males. I don't know why that has been that way, but it's still that way, where you live in a society where more Black men are submitting to white supremacy than the Black women. This is something that even Black content creators like Phil from Advice Show and even Tariq Nasheed just did a video talking about Black male submission to white supremacy. This has been something that's always been going on. There has always been more Black male submission than Black female submission. Anybody who picks up a slave narrative can find that out. The teacher was so shaken by the experience that she discussed it with her colleagues and students, who responded by wearing all Black the next day in protest. See, I'm tired of them passively doing these things. Wearing all Black isn't going to motivate the Department of Education to take out this whitewash history and replace it with real history, including that 1,000-year period of the Dark Ages. Do y'all ever wonder why I didn't hear about the Dark Ages in school? And I know y'all didn't either. Do y'all ever wonder why that is? Because it was 1,000 years of complete degeneracy, illiteracy, and complete incompetence that Europeans exhibited for 1,000 years, which is the equivalent of at least 36 generations in which they could not produce a child that had the mental wherewithal to get them out of that situation. It required the Black men to get them out of that situation. So that 1,000-year period right there throws out white supremacy. That's why they're not teaching it. About 75% of the school's 353 pupils participated in the event, which was organized by kids using Snapchat. And 71 students signed a petition calling on Catania to allow the lessons in Black culture to continue. See, the thing of it is stop asking them for permission to educate your children. It shouldn't even be asking them to allow you to do anything. You should be going to the Department of Education and demanding and forcing them to stop teaching your children lies. There shouldn't be an option to teach, to do that. Well, why do they even have the option to inferiorize your children? Sixth grader Savannah Villagomez, 11, said she confronted the principal about her double standards on the day of the protest. I asked her why we shouldn't learn about Black history. Villagomez said she said we weren't learning anything, but she didn't even look at our projects. I was angry, she added. She doesn't know our history and she wants to stop it. Anyway, this little girl, who's obviously a Black Hispanic, is who they're referring to. But I want to show you guys this video, and then I'll come back with some of this comment. I'll come back, because I'm going to wrap this video up, and I don't want it to be too long.
We are calling for you to remove immediately. Remove immediately.
And now at 5 o'clock, angry cries from students and teachers at a school in the Bronx. The group rallying against the principal at MS 224 after the principal told a teacher at the school she couldn't teach Black history.
This is, of course, Black History Month, and the majority of the students at the school happen to be Black or Hispanic. So a lot of parents are asking, why was the teacher singled out?
Eyewitness News reporter Joe Torres live in the Mott Haven section with the very latest for us. Joe?
Diana, according to the teacher at the center of this controversy, this involves much more than just the shutdown of a lesson on Black History Month. According to the teacher, this also involves the white principal's mistreatment of teachers and students here at the school, most of whom are Black and Latino.
Our history! Now!
Parents and students rallied outside MS 224 in Mott Haven to support an English teacher who claims the school principal is racist. Mercedes Liriano Clark says Principal Patricia Catania shut down her lessons on Black history in the middle of Black History Month.
She said that I'm an ELA teacher and therefore I shouldn't be teaching that. But it's part of the New York State curriculum. So you're telling New York State that they're wrong for instituting that type of curriculum in our schools?
Liriano Clark said even the students were appalled by the principal's action. Students who read, wrote, and developed storyboards about Black history.
I felt very angry by this situation because all of our boys were out there. We put our hard work into it, and she did not take not 1 minute of her time to look at it. because it's something that has to be stopped. You know, why shouldn't they be allowed to learn about their history? You know, 1 month of the year, 1 month.
Liliana Clark and her supporters say there's only one solution to the issues involving her principal.
She should not be around children. That type of mindset should not be in a school mindset. She needs to be removed and ultimately fired.
Now, just a few minutes ago, we got a statement from the Department of Education, which reads, in part, all schools must provide a supportive and inclusive environment, and there's no place for discrimination or bias in any of our schools. The statement goes on to add that the complaints here at the school are being investigated and that students are, in fact, working on projects related to Black History Month.
Now, what people need to understand that even if they get this teacher fired, that's not going to solve the issue, because you still have a ton. Look, it's not just this one teacher, it's the whole curriculum, it's the whole entire educational system that needs an overhaul. And until you get all of the information completely thrown out and replaced by accurate, true history, you're going to continue to be fighting this battle, because you're relying on your enemy to so-called educate the minds of your children. This isn't an educational system. It is an indoctrination system. And the only thing they're interested in is indoctrinating Black people into believing that they are inferior by not showing their historical accomplishments, European failures, European savagery, and are replacing the system with whitewashed history. That's what they're doing. They're whitewashing it to their benefit, and Black people are allowing it. And this battle does not need to be taken to a street protest. It needs to be taken to the degree where you're demanding and refusing to send your children to school until they change the entire Board of Education and its requirements and what it allows, the lies that it allows, and the historical lies that have now been confirmed. Because again, I can't stress enough, at this point, it has been confirmed that 90% of what they're teaching is false. Okay, and I want to say 100%, because even when you add in elements that don't belong there or omit history, they're still false. So the reality is that 100% of what they're teaching children is false, by way of omitting pertinent information. So why are Black people still allowing their children to be taught by this system? Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for your support. I'll see you in the next video.